Hi, this is My Keys to Music, and I'm Marc LaRochelle. In this video series, we're going to take a very deep dive to compare the Nord Stage 3 76 key and the Nord Electro 5D 73 key. So why compare these two keyboards? Well, it's interesting. This particular combination of keyboards represents both two different families of the Nord, being the Stage versus the Electro. Because their keys are different, one is the semi-weighted and the other one is the hammer action. So that's different there. There are also two different lengths. One is 73 key versus 76. So what's unique about these two keyboards is it gives us a nice variety of the Nord offerings in this particular comparison series. This series will most likely take place across 4 different videos, this being the first. Let me take you through a brief agenda so you know what to expect. Okay, part 1, which is this video, we're going to talk mostly about the hardware. So we'll have a brief intro, which I'm doing now. We're going to talk about the keyboards I had mentioned, the Waterfall versus the hammer action. We're going to compare the keyboard sizes, one on top of each other. What I've done is I have both of these keyboards here, so I've layered them on top of each other so you can see exactly the difference in size. It gives you a different perspective than just simply taking a ruler out and measuring. We're going to compare the weights and talk a little bit about the weight, how that, what kind of a musician are you? Are you one that gigs out all the time, or are you one that just needs it for the studio? So the weight does play a factor in your decision-making process. We're going to look at the key ranges and what are you giving up by going 73 versus 76, or if you go to the other type keyboards, the 61 key versus the 88 key. How does this all play a factor in your decision? We're going to talk about the drawbars, the digital versus the manual. And we're going to look at the back of the keyboards and look at the output differences because there are quite a bit of differences there. So a little bit about this video series. Even though we're talking about the Electro and the Stage families, please consider the Nord Piano and the Nord A1 as part of your decision. I don't go into much detail on those, but they should be considered. And the reason I don't go through much detail is because I don't own those keyboards, so I don't have first-hand experience and knowledge with them. But these two I do own and have that knowledge, so that's why I'm taking it from this perspective. But either way, no matter what keyboard you're looking for on Nord, I believe that this series will help you out, really gain a better understanding of the Nord in general, and obviously these two keyboards. All right, part 2, which will most likely be a second video, we're going to talk about the system. The main sound generators. Okay, so what do they come with? We've got organ, we got the piano, we got the samples, we got the synth. Let's talk about the differences between all that. We'll look at the programs, how they're set up, how many storage banks you have. Basically, those are the patches. The layers and how they work. The live versus autosave features, where you can go into live mode and have a different performance option there for you. We're going to talk about the panels on the Stage 3, which are different than, let's say, how the layering and the splits work on the Nord Electro 5. There's plenty to learn there on how that works and how the different options fit together. And then we'll talk quite a bit about the keyboard splitting, how the keyboard splits into multiple sections, multiple splits, and how all that works together. Part 3, which will, again, most likely be another video because these videos can get really long because we are going to go very much in depth on this. The specifications. This is now where we're talking about the RAM differences in terms of storage and the polyphony, because the polyphony is quite different between the two keyboards. We're going to go a little deeper on comparing the different organs. Yes, they're both modeled after the same organ engine, but there are some differences between the two and some that are not often talked about. We're going to compare the pianos. Yes, they use the same piano library, but the way that they're actually executed in terms of additional preferences and settings you can add after the fact to model the piano beyond what the original sample is also something we're going to talk about. We're going to compare the sample engines. Yes, they both have a sample engine, but the way that the envelope filters and things like that are applied is slightly different between the two keyboards, so that needs to be discussed, I believe. And then we're going to talk about the synth portion of the Stage 3 and how that addition really makes a difference and adds to a big part of your decision-making process. And there's a lot of interesting things there to talk about on the synth part of that. And then part 4, we're going to talk about the effects and clean up the whole thing, talk about pricing, and do a recap. So join me, sit back, let this information wash over you. I remember when I was trying to make a decision between these two keyboards, I had a heck of a time doing it. I spent a lot of days, weeks, even months really contemplating, because this is a big investment, and you want to make the right decision, because usually a decision like this lasts for a while, and you know you want Nord perhaps, but you're not quite sure which one, or maybe you're not even sure you want Nord. This is a perfect video for you. You'll learn a lot about the Nord features. Keyboard sizes. Here we have the Electro 5D 61 key. Now all this information you can get directly on the website, but I'm putting it here so I can make a little bit of commentary on it. First of all, this keyboard is super light. It's 17 pounds, 8.1 kilograms. It's really portable. But what you're giving up is the octaves. You've got 5 full octaves. And most of my life, I've played with a keyboard with 5 octaves, but when I have the chance to play with a 73 or 76 key, I always enjoy that extra little bit. But a lot of times, the larger keyboards have that much harder time fitting on stages. If you're in a small setting, a small club, or if you don't have enough room in your office or your home studio or wherever you're going to bring it, this 61 key gets the job done. And remember, on the Nord, you always have those octave up and down button. The button will allow you to instantly move the keyboard up and down the range. And Nord in particular makes that super easy. So if you do decide to get the 61 because it's got the right price and it's got the right size and all of that, you won't be losing too much by having less keys, especially if you're more of a synth player and less of a piano player. So that's all I want to say about the 61 key, but that is a really good option, a good entry-level option. Okay, next we have the Electro 5D, the 73 key, still a semi-weighted keyboard and waterfall. This time you get a whole extra octave with the 73 key, so you just add 12 more keys, and you can see it pictured here. The range goes from E to E in this case, instead of C to C. So the weight on that is a little bit more. It's about 3 pounds more or so than the one prior. But still, very light keyboard, very portable. This is the one I actually own, and it's been a great keyboard on gigs and so forth. Okay, the next one up is the Electro 5 HP. This is the 73 key hammer action portable. So you are going to be picking up another 5 pounds on this or so, up to 11.4 kilograms. You still have the same octave range because it's still 73 keys, and the configuration is still E to E. Okay, next we talk about the Stage 3 Compact. This is a nice choice because you're now in the Stage line of keyboards. You've still got a nice 73 key, semi-weighted, which is you'll find is obviously a little lighter, potentially quicker to play if you like to play fast and so forth. The configuration is E to E. Still get the 6 octaves. Like I said, 22 pounds or 10 kilograms. And the sizes are there. All of this you can get on the website, but like I said, I'm taking you through this. Notice the configuration here. We have the organ stops that are the manual sliders for the organ stops. Okay, the next stage up is the Stage 3 HP 76. This is the one I have. I wanted it because I wanted to try the hammer action portable and see what that's like. At that point, your configuration is E to G. 6 or a little bit more octaves, so you get 3 more keys on the top. You still start on E on the bottom, and you'll see I'll line these up here in a second, and you'll see what they look like size-wise, the 73 versus 76. You do add a few more pounds or a couple more pounds, not too much. You add a little bit of length and so forth, a little bit of size dimensions, but you do get the electronic organ stops, so if you like the electronic versus the manual, it's a nice feature. It also looks really well. It's a nice balance between the buttons on the top and the sides of the keyboard. So this is a really nice Stage 3 configuration as well. And then finally, the big boy, you get the Stage 3 88 key. Probably more designed for people who are true traditional piano players. They want all of those 88 keys. They don't want to have restrictions. Great for classical music, things like that. You do pick up quite a bit of weight because now you're talking about the fully weighted keys. I'm sure you're going to have a great feel. I haven't played much with this keyboard, so I can't speak firsthand how it feels, but I'm sure there are people on the internet and on YouTube who can tell you that. Now you're getting over 7 octaves on your range. From the configuration is low A to high C, which is traditional piano. But now you're talking, quite a bit bigger. But not out of the question, 40 pounds for a keyboard. I mean, Nord is known for some of the lightest keyboards available for what they do and for how big they are in terms of, keyboard range. So really not, you can't go wrong with any of these choices. You just have to pick the one that's right for you. All right, so that's what I want to talk about there. Now, I went ahead and made this slide because this puts them in order by weight. And the interesting thing is here, you'll see that the Stage 3 Compact 73 is actually lighter than the Electro 5 HP. That Stage 3 Compact, if you're looking for, I want to get the basic Stage 3, 22 pounds, 10 kilograms, it's not much of a deal breaker at all. So that's why I put that slide there. All right, let's take a look at the key lengths. This was a big surprise for me, and maybe it wasn't a surprise for you, but it was for me. When you're talking about the Stage 3, it's the key length is actually longer than it is on the Electro. So the white keys are nearly 6 inches long, 151 millimeters. This is approximate. I didn't measure this scientifically. I just took a regular ruler. And then the black keys here are about 3 7/8 inches or 98.4 millimeters. And then compared to the Electro 5D, a little bit shorter. We've got 5.5 inches there, 139 millimeters. And then the black keys are 3 1/4. So again, I would say that the small keys are more like a traditional electronic keyboard. And that's the Waterfall configuration you see there, versus the other one, which is more of a traditional, like a grand piano key configuration. If you want to learn more about the key beds and some of the differences and some of the great history and background, I'll put a link down below to Piano Man Chuck. He has a nice video which he really talks extensively about the key beds used in the Nord and other keyboards, and you can get a different perspective if you're really into wanting to know all about the key beds on these keyboards. Okay. So now we have sizes when they're put on top of each other. So on top here you have the Nord Electro 5D, that's the 73 key, and below it, and I lined these up as close as I could, I lined them up top and left. So now you can see the 76 key Stage 3 in the bottom, really not that much wider for those 3 extra keys. It's approximately 3 keys wider. And then you can see, but quite a bit longer, there's more depth there. Here's another angle, so you can see how that overlaps there. And then this is what it looks like if you were to stack them like this. So you can see that the Stage 3 on the bottom is quite a bit taller in terms of that height compared to the Electro. And this view is particularly interesting because it'll really tell you if it fits in the stand that you've got. Now, obviously, these are stacked right on top of each other. You would never play like that, and this is just for size demonstration purposes, but it gives you a good idea there. And then finally, this is what it looks like from the back. And you can see that, again, the Stage 3 in the bottom is quite a bit taller, but it just needs to have room for that key bed because that's the Hammer Action Portable, and it needs room for the electronics as well. So I assume that's why those sizes are so different. Okay, now in this video, we're going to look at the difference between the Waterfall versus the traditional keyboard, and we'll go take a look at that now. Okay, here we have the non-Waterfall keyboard. This is the Hammer Action, and down below here I have the semi-weighted Waterfall. I'll get a close-up here in a second, but I'm just going to show you. When you take your hand like this, that not only are the keys heavier to move, but there's a ridge here that really kind of grates on your hand. Whereas the semi-action or semi-weighted Waterfall, I can do this all day long. It doesn't hurt at all. So that's partially because the keys are lighter and partially because they're more rounded. There's really no ridge here at all. Here there's a ridge, a traditional piano. So I think that makes a big difference if you do this a lot. But you can do this too. Even that's a little harder on the weighted keys because they're heavier. This is just a piece of cake. So that's some of the differences there. I don't know if you can see that there. But that's what the looks like with the traditional weighted keys. It's got a ridge there. You can actually see the shadow under the key, indicating that there is in fact a ridge. And that's what they look like really close up. Also note these are longer. So those are actually longer from top to bottom. Now the ones on the bottom here, the semi-weighted, you can see there's the Waterfall. Look at that. totally different key. I mean, you wouldn't know it until you really study it and look closely like this. But it's a huge difference in the way this is designed. And it makes for a different effect. Let me go ahead and pull this keyboard out a little bit if I can. Yeah, there you go. Now you can see the height of that versus the height of these, the length. This is far more like a grand piano, which you'd see in a grand piano setting. This is more like an electronic keyboard setting. Now, they're both electronic keyboards, but you know what I'm trying to say. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Aftertouch. I've got one sound setting here that we can talk about. There's many different sounds you can choose from that have Aftertouch, but this is the one I chose, so have a look at that. Okay, and now we're ready for our Aftertouch test. I'm going to hold this key and do nothing other than just play it gently with no pressing after the fact. Okay, that's what it sounds like with no Aftertouch invoked. Here's what you can do when you have Aftertouch. I'm going to continue to push harder and harder until we get to a max point and then back off. This time I'll push it to a max point quicker, but then back off slowly so that you get to hear it before the whole note decays. All right, the pitch bend and mod wheel. Again, this is on the stage only. Okay, here we can see the mod wheel. And this is a really nice, it's almost made of, it's like a metal. It's really got a lot of grip to it. It's almost, it feels just like a sharpening stone, like what you'd sharpen a knife on. That's how grippy it is. Then we have this. Now this is interesting. This is like made out of wood. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get really close to that. That is actually made out of wood, and it's on a spring, and you know, it bounces back like that. Not that you would do that normally, but you know, it really has a lot of resistance to it, so you're not going to actually, you know, it's not like you're going to keep it there and it's going to stay. It's always going to bounce back. So it's a very unique pitch bend compared to so many other keyboards. And it really is of high quality, and it kind of looks cool. So there they are together. Of course, this is available only on the Stage 3 versus the Electro. But those are really, really nice features and goes hand in hand with the synth module. Okay, let's look at the digital drawbars. Well, that's what I'm calling them anyway. Push button, digital. So here they're all off. Let's just go ahead and put one on. I can do it incrementally like this. You can see this is very responsive, so it's immediate the moment you click it. If you hold it, you'll see that it moves very quickly up and down that chain. So it is quite responsive. Being keyboard players, we can easily do this and mash it like that. Multiple fingers, 5 if you want. Pretty easy to move those digital drawbars. Just do that. You might even want to twinkle it like that, whatever. There's a lot of different options you have with the digital drawbars. I like the look of the digital drawbars a little better. It's a little bit more high-tech. Let's go have a look at the analog ones now. Okay, these are the manual organ stops. And they have the same increments, 1 through 8. And, you know, I suppose with this you can do them all at once if you have a whole hand to do that. But they work pretty well. Okay, and finally we have the outputs, or the back panel. The Nord Electro 5D has everything you'd expect in a traditional, you know, it's got all the essentials. You've got the control panel, the rotary pedal, the sustain pedal, of course the USB. You've got the MIDI in and out. You've got the monitor in, the left and right out, and the headphones. The Stage 3 has all of that, plus you get the program up and down pedal, which is great. You can have a pedal to switch your programs with hands-off capability or hands-on capability. You can keep playing while you switch your programs up and down. You've got the organ swell pedal, which is another way of modulating the volume on your organ. And then you have 2 additional outs, which are also programmable. All 4 outputs are programmable, but the 2 outs give you that extra bonus in terms of capability and flexibility on where you want to route your sound to. So if you're working a little bit in a more sophisticated gig or in the studio, you do have that extra option to route the sound. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this first video. We've got more on the way. This is just the beginning of this extensive review of the comparison between the Nord Electro 5D and the Stage 3. Thanks for watching.